Hey y'all, Dustin here. Well, week 7 is officially over in the college football world. We are halfway done officially with the season, which is crazy. Somehow college football always tends to go exponentially faster every year, and I don't understand. It's almost November, we're already halfway through. The 7th top 25 for the AP poll has been released, so I figured we would make a video talking about it, kind of getting some engagement, and I would give you some of my thoughts on what they did right, what they did wrong, and then give my poll after it. And of course, I made my poll before I ever saw the AP poll. I actually made it about 1 o'clock Sunday, and theirs came out about 2:15. So without further ado, let's get started. Of course, number 1 is Alabama. Not only are they number 1 in the country, they also received 60 of the 61 eligible AP voter votes. Michigan, which came in at number 3rd, actually got the other vote. Ohio State is number 2. If I had to pick, as good as Michigan and Wisconsin, or also Wisconsin, but as good as Michigan and Washington are playing, if I had to pick who I think are the best 2 teams in the country right now, I'm going Alabama, Ohio State. So I think those are good. They slid Clemson from 3 down to 4 and moved Michigan up on a bye week, which, isn't bad to get in the top 3 on a bye week. I think that's perfectly fine. Clemson basically showed its ass against NC State. Still found a way to win, which is really good for that team. It's a confidence builder. But at this stage in the game, even if NC State is a much improved team than we definitely thought they were, especially since that loss to East Carolina, Clemson probably shouldn't go into overtime against NC State at home. Especially the last 2 times they kind of blew them out. Deshaun Watson had career days. You probably play better at home against that NC State team. 5 is Washington. 6 is Texas A&M, and 7 is Louisville. They stayed the same. Nebraska and Baylor moved up to 8 and 9, which is pretty cool. Can you imagine Nebraska? I mean, they are in the top 8 in the country. Who would have thunk it? At number 10, you have 2-loss Wisconsin. This is a team that has lost 2 games by a combined 14 points. They lost by 7 in the Big House against Michigan, which is number 3 currently, and they lost in overtime at home against number 2 Ohio State. They have 2 losses, they fell 2 spots, and they're still in the top 10, and I think that's perfectly fine. Number 11 is Houston. Number 12, the biggest jump in the poll this week at 8 spots is West Virginia. This is a team that I keep forgetting about. So when I talk about undefeated Big 12 teams, I always mention Baylor. And I'm like, well, the Big 12 doesn't really have any teams that are eligible for the playoffs. The Big 12 is basically eliminated. Oh, no, there's Baylor. I guess Baylor could technically qualify. And then I go on with the conversation. West Virginia is looking very, very good. They shut down the best offense in the country, held them to 17 points at home on homecoming. That's impressive. Number 13 is Florida State, still hanging in there with 2 losses. They host Clemson in 2 weeks. That'll be the big test for them to possibly get back into the top 10. At 14, you have Boise State, still undefeated. 15, you have Florida, who played Missouri and beat the crap out of them, which they should. They had an impromptu bye week last week. At number 16, you have Oklahoma. What will be interesting is Navy obviously proved that Houston can be beaten. What if Houston loses again? Does that drop Oklahoma's stake? Do they fall in the rankings because of a Houston loss? Or does that loss to Ohio State keep Oklahoma going strong? I assume Norman is a big Buckeye fan right now. Everybody in Norman, Oklahoma, because as long as Ohio State keeps winning, Oklahoma still looks good and has a chance at one of the at-large bids for one of the New Year's Six Bowls, possibly. Number 17 and 18 are Arkansas and Tennessee, respectively. I think it's interesting they ended up this way. Arkansas moved up 5 spots in the poll after beating Ole Miss. Tennessee fell 9 after being just obliterated by Alabama. What's interesting about these 2 teams being back-to-back in the poll are that they both have 2 losses. Both of them have lost to Alabama and Texas A&M, and nobody else. Very interesting. Number 19 is Utah. Looking a little shaky, barely beating Oregon State like that, but they're hanging in there. Number 20 is Western Michigan. I think this is a good story. This is only their second week ever being ranked after, last week. They are still undefeated, and they are ahead of number 21 Auburn, which no, they were ranked last week. Auburn is starting to make some moves. They beat Mississippi State big. I think they had a bye week last week. We'll see what they do in the SEC West going forward. Certainly plenty of statement games left to be decided. Number 22 and number 25 is North Carolina and LSU. Both teams that lost high-profile neutral site games on opening day and kind of fell from graces, and then lost in kind of weird circumstances to conference division teams. LSU, of course, on that weird finish at Auburn that eventually cost Les Miles his job, and North Carolina getting beat down 34-3 against Virginia Tech at home in a hurricane. But neither of them were ranked last week. They are back in the polls. LSU, I think, is a very scary team. I know it was just Southern Miss, but they have looked very good the last few weeks under Coach O. Even if sometimes you don't totally understand what he's saying, the players do, and in the end, that's all that matters. And they have done everything they've done the last few weeks without Leonard Fournette. This could be a pretty scary team coming up. At number 23, you had Ole Miss, which is still hanging in. 3-3 Ole Miss is still in the rankings. I'll go ahead and be a little bit of a spoiler alert. I do not have a 3-loss team in my rankings. You lose 3 games, you lose half your games so far, you're out. That's just the way it is in my poll. But, of course, because of their preseason ranking and because of the teams that they've lost to, Florida State, Alabama, and Arkansas, all of which are ranked ahead of them, they're sticking in there, but we will see how long that lasts. And number 24 is Navy. They were 25 last week, I believe. They move up one spot after an impromptu bye week. They were playing East Carolina, but there's flooding apparently in the Greenville, North Carolina area, so they had to postpone that game until November 19th, the exact same day that Florida and LSU were postponed. According to the others receiving vote section, the next 5 up are Colorado, Miami, Oklahoma State, Washington State, and Virginia Tech. I have no fault there. So now I want to kind of go down my top 25. I'm going to start with the others receiving votes and work my way up. Try to give it a little bit different, see if there's any drama at the top. Now remember, of course, this is just my personal opinion. This is my poll, and I'm going to rank it how I basically set it up. So how I do it is I kind of list all the undefeated teams, all the 1-loss teams, all the 2-loss teams, and I kind of start picking and choosing, and I kind of work my way from the bottom. So the teams that I felt were the least deserving to be in the top 25 that I had as top 25 worthy contenders that were kind of in that area. My next 5 up is North Carolina, Oklahoma State, Washington State, Ole Miss, and Stanford. And it's simply because of their losses. North Carolina to unranked Georgia and unranked Virginia Tech now. Oklahoma State lost to Central Michigan. I know they shouldn't have, but it shouldn't have been that close. Washington State lost to Eastern Washington. That loss is going to haunt them the rest of the season, and probably the rest of Mike Leach's career. Ole Miss has 3 losses. Sorry, you're out. And Stanford, you got blown out by both Washington schools. Like, run off the field. Ugh. So I'm putting this kind of in terms of who lost to who, more so than I just think this team is better than other teams right now. I think all of that will work itself out. So right now at number 25, I have Navy, and at number 24, I have Utah. Navy lost to an Air Force team that just lost 2 straight games, and Utah lost to a Cal team that, while impressive offensively, have lost some games they probably shouldn't have lost, especially the trajectory we had them going after they beat Texas. Number 23, I have Colorado. They had a big win against Arizona State. They look good. They got their starting quarterback back. But that loss to USC still hurts, although if USC kind of keeps putting wins together, that loss will eventually look better. At number 22, I have the USF Bulls. Their only loss was at home to a really good Florida State team. They can score points in bunches. I just need to see more of them. I would like to see more of them. Number 21, I have Miami. Currently, their 2 losses are to the number 13 and the number 22 teams currently ranked in the AP poll. That's what's kind of pushing them ahead of some of the other teams below them and keeping them where they are. They can take some form of control in the Coastal, as much as a team can take control in the Coastal, by beating Virginia Tech this week. And a win over Virginia Tech will knock Virginia Tech out of the next 5 up and push Miami a little further up in the poll for me. At number 20, I have LSU. Yes, I think this is a much vastly improved team under Coach Orgeron. I just think those losses that Les Miles had is going to haunt this team. I know that they're a new team with a new coach, but they still took the field this fall, and I can't award them based on they fired a head coach and they look better now. It's still the team record, but the 2 teams they lost to, one's in the top 10 and one is 21 in the country. So not the worst resume in the world. At number 19, I have Florida. That loss to Tennessee looks worse now after watching Tennessee get blown out by Alabama. You start to realize that Florida just isn't there yet. There's still something missing, even with that very impressive blowout win over Missouri. At number 18, I have Houston. Yes, they're down at number 18. They lost to a Navy team that they, by all accounts, probably should not have lost to. I know Greg Ward has had some injury issues and stuff like that, but they needed a miracle to beat Tulsa. That boy from Tulsa was at the 1-inch line of that touchdown to send it into overtime, and they stopped him by a miracle. So if they lost to Tulsa, where would they have been? If they're just as good as Tulsa, should they be number 11 in the country? I'm not convinced. At number 17, I have the undefeated Western Michigan Broncos. I would love for them to play another Power 5 team. I think this is a confident team. This team can score a lot of points. And they're 2-0 against the Big Ten. That's pretty impressive. There are a lot of teams in the Big Ten that can't really say that right now. Number 16, I have Florida State. That blowout loss to Louisville seems like it happened under Bobby Bowden. It seems so far ago. It wasn't. It was just about a month ago. It just seems like a lot further. So, still counting that blowout loss, and then they lost to North Carolina at home. I got them at 16. At number 15, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. They had a big win at home against a tough Kansas State team. That loss to Ohio State is what's pushing them ahead of some of the others. That's a good loss comparably, because Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country. So as long as Ohio State keeps winning and Oklahoma keeps winning, I think Oklahoma will traject up the polls a little bit. I think they'll make some leeway based on who they've lost to. They cannot afford Houston to lose another game, though. At number 14, believe it or not, I have the Auburn Tigers. Now, their only current losses are to the number 4 Clemson Tigers and the number 6 Texas A&M Aggies. Those are good losses. Now, I think both of them are at home. I know the Clemson one was. I'm pretty sure the Texas A&M one was. But those are technically good losses. They've beaten LSU, and they have looked pretty impressive in the last few games. They still have a lot of noise to make, including against Arkansas this week. And we'll see how it goes. But right now I have them at 14. Just like in the AP poll, I have Arkansas and Tennessee identical, back-to-back, same team, same record. Not same team, obviously, but same record. I have Arkansas at 12 and Tennessee at 13. At number 11, I have Boise State. Now, I'm not sure why. When I started at the bottom, I got to number 11 and I slotted them there based on their undefeated record. They beat Washington State. They're looking pretty good offensively. And I was like, oh, I guess I have Boise State at 11 now. Okay, that's my poll. It's not that big of a deal. They're only 3 spots higher than they are in the actual AP poll. It's just weird seeing that 11 beside them, knowing that there's a whole lot of really, really good teams in the country this year. At number 10, I did it. I did an AP poll. I did your dirty work for you. I put West Virginia at number 10. I put them in the top 10. They're undefeated in the Big 12. I've somehow overlooked them this whole season. Not anymore. You hold the top-rated passer, top-rated passing offense, top-rated offense, scoring offense, everything to 17 points at home. You're number 10. You're undefeated. You're in a great conference. You still get a shot at Baylor. You're number 10 right now, Mountaineers. I'm going to cheat for my number 9. At number 9, I have a tie. I hate doing this. I couldn't figure out who to put where. You have Wisconsin, who has the best 2 losses in the country. And then you have Louisville, who may have the best 1 loss in the country. And as good as Wisconsin has played in those games, I'm not sure which one's better. I know literally you would rather have your team have one loss compared to two, but honestly, Wisconsin played so hard, they didn't get down by 18 points like Louisville did. They also didn't fight back. They also gave up the lead against Ohio State. I don't know. It's really tough. I'm cheating. And I know because there's two teams at 9 that technically there shouldn't have been a 10. Therefore, Navy shouldn't be ranked. But I couldn't do that to them. So we technically have a top 26 this week. It's my poll. I'll do what I want. At number 8, I have Baylor, who beat Kansas the way you're supposed to beat Kansas. I'm looking at you, TCU. At number 7, I have undefeated Nebraska. I'm giving priority to undefeated teams at this point, and Nebraska has found ways to win throughout the season. They beat a really good Indiana defense in Bloomington, which is surprisingly, believe it or not, if you haven't been paying attention, pretty hard to do. That defense is really, really good. At number 6, I have Texas A&M. They had a bye week this week. At number 5, I have the Clemson Tigers. I think that team did everything they could in their power. Every single thing they could possibly do to lose that game, and yet NC State still found a way to lose it more. NC State had a field goal hit the upright, a field goal blocked, and a field goal missed by about that much before going into overtime. NC State, at the end of that fourth quarter, I was at this game, at the end of the fourth quarter, Clemson could not stop the run. NC State was just running it down their throat. They were dictating every single thing they did on the field. So NC State opens overtime by throwing a pass. They deserve to lose if you just look at the play calling, even though at times they looked like the better team on the field. Their offense moved it very well. Clemson's did too, but NC State's defense got stops. I don't know. Anyway, that was a weird rant. I have Clemson at number 5 in this week's polls. I dropped them down. At number 4, I have Washington. Number 3, I have Michigan. They move up on bye weeks. At number 2, I have Ohio State. Arguably the best game I've seen, that was grown man football, Ohio State and Wisconsin. And Ohio State, that last drive to tie it up, J.T. Barrett and company looked gutsy. They made terrific plays when they had to make them. They gritted it out to send it in overtime, and then they put Wisconsin's offense in a bad position in overtime to secure the win on the road against a rabid Wisconsin-Madison home crowd. I know it was Madison, Wisconsin. Madison-Wisconsin home crowd. Great win for Ohio State. Character-building win for Ohio State as if they needed that already. And I genuinely do not see this team losing the rest of the way. They, of course, have Michigan, very last game, but I think they'll be 11-0 getting there. And, of course, at number 1, I have Alabama. Their defense and special teams have scored more points than some offenses in the country. This is a well-rounded team. Jalen Hurts' rushing ability has added something that this offense has not had under Nick Saban, even with Blake Sims. Ohio State, Alabama seem, at this moment, I'm sorry, Michigan fans, at this moment seem to be on a collision course, but we will see. The big game will definitely have something to do with that. And Alabama and Texas A&M, that game this weekend will have something to say about that as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up down there below. You can also hit this red subscribe button that's right down there if you want to catch more college football content coming every other day, it seems like, during the college football season. Definitely 3 or 4 times a week. Don't miss out. Also, if you want to catch more college football videos by me, you can click that box there for last week's AP Top 25 reaction, and that box down there for my video on Navy beating Houston. Really big deal as the polls indicate so far. Thank y'all again for watching. I genuinely appreciate it. I'll see you down in the comments section, and as always, until next time. It kind of blew them out. Deshaun Watson had career days. You probably play better at home against that NC State team. 5 is Washington, 6 is Texas A&M, and 7 is Louisville. They stayed the same. Nebraska and Baylor moved up to 8 and 9, which is pretty cool. Can you imagine Nebraska? I mean, they are in the top 8 in the country. Who would have thunk it? At number 10, hey y'all, Dustin here. Well, week 7 is officially over in the college football world. We are halfway done officially with the season, which is crazy. somehow college football always tends to go exponentially faster every year, and I don't understand. It's almost November. We're already halfway through. The 7th top 25 for the AP poll has been released, so I figured we would make a video talking about it. Kind of came in at number 3rd, actually got the other vote. Ohio State is number 2. If I had to pick, as good as Michigan and Wisconsin, or also Wisconsin, but as good as Michigan and Washington are playing, if I had to pick who I think are the best 2 teams in the country right now, I'm going Alabama, Ohio State. So I think those are good. They slid Clemson from 3 down to 4 and moved Michigan up on a bye week, which, isn't bad to get in the top 3 on a bye week. I think that's perfectly fine. Clemson basically showed its ass against NC State. Still found a way to win, which is really good for that team. It's a confidence builder. But at this stage in the game, even if NC State is a much improved team than we definitely thought they were, especially since that loss to East Carolina, Clemson probably shouldn't go into overtime against NC State at home, especially the last 2 times, getting some engagement. And I will give you some of my thoughts on what they did right, what they did wrong, and then give my poll after it. And, of course, I made my poll before I ever saw the AP poll. I actually made it about 1 o'clock Sunday, and theirs came out about 2:15. So without further ado, let's get started. Of course, number 1 is Alabama. Not only are they number 1 in the country, they also received 60 of the 61 eligible AP voter votes. Michigan, which